DermBiz episode 4. This episode is all about office managers. We discuss why an office manager is important, the 3 kinds of office managers, common mistakes in hiring office managers, when is the right time to hire an office manager, how do you measure the performance of an office manager, and the most important thing, which is the number 1 responsibility of an office manager. We discussed that as well. DermBiz episode 4, office managers. Let's get started. If you're the owner of the practice, your people are eventually going to get tired of listening to you. The rest of the team is not going to tell the doctor the truth all the time. They're going to need another voice that they can listen to and hear that's coming from someone different is going to hit differently. So before I even get into the details of office manager, I just want to talk about why we're making this video. We believe that small practice ownership, doctor, owner, and operated derm practices are very important. We believe they're vital to quality healthcare. We believe they're vital to quality healthcare jobs. And we believe that they add so much value to the community that they're in. That's why we're making this video. And so in regards to office managers, should you have an office manager or not? My answer is yes, you need an office manager. And why? Here are a few reasons. First of all, as a doctor, anybody who's running a business, you're going to have blind spots. It's only going to be certain things that you can see, because you can't be everywhere all the time. There's going to be things that are going on in a practice that may not necessarily be up to par, that you may not necessarily notice. And so it's always good to have a second set of eyes to see what's going on. Another reason why it's good to have office managers, because quite frankly, if you're the owner of the practice, your people are eventually going to get tired of listening to you. And they're going to need another voice that they can listen to and hear. They may say the same exact thing, but the fact that it's coming from someone different is gonna hit differently. Another thing is it gives you a different perspective on your business. Maybe you're a doctor who's super focused on medical excellence and high quality services and exactness in prescriptions and procedures and all of those things. But you may not necessarily be thinking about marketing or the culture of the business and practice or, resolving conflicts. And so it's great to have someone who brings a different perspective to the table. And then also too, it's just a person who gives you support on the business level. Listen, your medical assistants, your LPNs, they're going to give you support from a medical standpoint. They're going to scribe the notes for you. They're going to send the prescriptions for you. They're going to call and talk to patients. They're going to be there for the medical support. But your office manager also gives you business support. This may be somebody you can talk about wage expenses with. This is somebody that you could talk about profit and loss. This is somebody you can talk about the new marketing campaign. And so it's important to have that person who you can, bounce ideas around and collaborate with. But one key caveat is if you're going to build a solo practice, see episode 1, where it's just you and a supporting cast, you may not necessarily need an office manager. When it's only, 4 or 5 people, you may not necessarily need an office manager. There's not much to manage. You're right there. They see you. And so your example, in a lot of ways, serves as an office manager, and the fact that you have such tight-knit communication with all of the members of your team. So my answer is yes, you definitely want to have an office manager. The number one thing to think about is what the office manager specifically does is going to be based upon that office and that doctor. But overall, the office manager is supposed to be the doctor's number 2. All great businesses have a number 2. Steve Jobs had Steve Wozniak. Bill Gates had Paul Allen. Sergey Brin and Larry Page. It's always great to have 2 people that can collaborate. Magic happens when you have 2 people that can, with complementing skills, that can collaborate with one another. And so it's very important. Oftentimes what you'll find is there's a combination of somebody who's more of a technical person and somebody who's more of a visionary leadership type of person. I'll give you an example. Maybe you have a doctor who is, they are meticulous. They're meticulous on procedures, and they're meticulous on their how they prescribe medications, and all doctors should be. But I'm saying, maybe at an extra level, they're very detail oriented. They're very meticulous in how they do everything. Oftentimes, these individuals may have a difficulty on communicating their message. Not to do stereotypes, but oftentimes the person who is a stickler for detail, and they can kind of get lost in the minutia of detail, oftentimes they may not necessarily be the best communicator. And so that person, that doctor may want to get an office manager who is a good communicator, who is a law student, has a law degree, somebody who maybe is strong in an area where they may not necessarily be strong. But having a number two is very, very important. And that's the role that the office manager plays. Another thing that the office manager does is their job is to keep score of how the rest of the team is performing. Now, we have our own system that we use at Lilly Dermatology. Now, we've created with our staff, with our team together, we created a scoring system. Everybody turns in their score at the end of the day. And then, we calculate the score and send it to people at the end of the week. And, the highest scoring person gets, wins a prize. But the office manager's role is to know how everyone is doing. And if you can, everyone on the team is doing. And if you can quantify that, the more you can quantify that, the more clearly you can now go back and report to the doctor. And so the office manager's job is to keep score and then to let the doctor know that score and communicate that score with the doctor. And so that's something that's very important. Another thing office manager does, I'm just going to run down a couple of things. They're responsible for conflict resolution. They should probably be the lead person in areas of conflict resolution. They may be the person who's doing the hiring and the firing of people. Their job is to be a talent scout in the organization. Their job is to be a cheerleader, but their job is also to be a coach. Maybe they do bookkeeping. Maybe they do administrative work like you suggested. Maybe, but the overall role is, and none of these things that I named are hard and fast rules where this is what the office manager has to do. But overall, the number one job of the office manager is to be the number two to the doctor and to complement the doctor. Their job is to be strong where the doctor is either weak or the doctor doesn't have the time to be strong. So the office manager is designed to be able to play in tandem with the doctor. They follow the doctor's lead and need, and they fill in those spots where the doctor needs the most. That's a great question. And from our experience, there's basically three options. You can have a hybrid office manager where maybe they're a nurse and then they're also your office manager. Maybe they're an admin person and they're also your office manager. You may have somebody who's a full-time office manager, meaning that's all they do. They're office manager all day long. And then the third is they have fractional office management companies out there where they may help you manage. They're not in the clinic with you day to day, but through the apps that they use and through the their ability to collect data and them communicating with the staff, they can kind of remotely help you manage your office. So those are kind of the three ways of determining who should be your office manager. So I'm going to start off with saying how not to hire an office manager. The first thing you want to do is you don't want to choose someone solely because you trust them or you're comfortable with them. I think that it's human nature to say, hey, I'm going into this very challenging and difficult situation, and I want to have somebody by my side who makes me feel warm and fuzzy. You don't just want the trust and the relationship that you have to direct you to be an office manager, because this person, the office manager, has to compliment you, not giving you compliments, but they have to offset your strengths and weaknesses. And so, one of the big mistakes people make is they hire someone solely based upon their relationship with that person. That's a no no. Second is not knowing your management style. And therefore, when you don't know your management style, it's very difficult to pick somebody who's going to complement that management style. I'll give you a perfect example. No offense to anybody out there watching, but it is common knowledge that many doctors can be a bit of a jerk. Some can be jerks, They could be a little brash sometimes. They could be a little tough to handle sometimes. And I don't think that that's a problem. You can be that way. However, when you pick your office manager, you probably want somebody who's a little softer, who communicates a little more friendlier, who can kind of make the tough medicine that you administer a little bit more easy to digest. But if you don't know that you're uh, have jerk tendencies, that you're this hard charging person that oftentimes rubs people the wrong way, you may hire an office manager just like you, and now you have a problem, because now you have two people who may potentially clash, and then your team is getting a double dose of what they may not want to get any dose of. So those are the two issues that I see: hiring the person who you just feel comfortable with, because you know them, you have a relationship with them, or not knowing who you are and how you operate, and hiring somebody who may not necessarily mesh and fit with you well. How to hire a good office manager, in my personal opinion, is see video 2, where we went over hiring and interviewing. I explained in detail on that episode how to hire somebody who fits your culture, who fits what you believe, and who you can, have a higher success rate once you offer them the job. So we're gonna assume that you're in a position where you need an office manager. You're not a doctor who has maybe one or two nurses, and maybe one admin person. That person maybe doesn't need an office manager. Once you get bigger than that, I would say once you get to 7, 8, 9, 10 people, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people and more, you're going to probably need an office manager. When should you hire an office manager? If you're in that position, you should hire an office manager yesterday. You want to hire them as soon as possible. As a matter of fact, my personal belief is your very first hire should be your office manager. Why? Because your office manager, you want them to be a part of the hiring process as you're building a new team. You want to be able to establish the position of that office manager. If they're going to be in a position to be managing these people, it's a little bit more difficult where you have an office manager, but there are other people who've been around longer than the office manager. Not saying that can't work out, because that can work out too. But my personal opinion is you want to make your very, very first hire your office manager, because that hire goes into alignment with what's your motivation, what kind of practice you're going to have after you've done your business plan and determine exactly how you're going to operate. You want to have an office manager that you can put alongside of you, who's kind of co-creating this team with you. Again, as the doctor, as the person who owns the practice, you're going to have the last say, but it's always good to have somebody who you can collaborate along the way when you're putting together that team. And that is the role that you want the office manager to play. That's a great question. It's a very simple. The scoreboard of the office manager is the individual performance of each people on the team. If somebody's underperforming, it's the office manager's fault, especially if this is the office manager who has hiring and firing duties and responsibilities. If you hired a person and they're underperforming, it's your fault. If you hired a person and they're underperforming, either means that you shouldn't have hired them or they're undertrained. Either way, that goes back to the office manager. So, as a doctor, if you've basically given them the reins to a lot of the business side, anytime there's key business issues, specifically with employees, it's the office manager's fault. So, depending upon the level of autonomy that you give to the office manager, are you allowing them to hire people? Are you allowing them to, let people go? Obviously, in conjunction with your feedback when things are not working. If so, the scoreboard of the office manager, how well they're doing is you look through and you see how each one of your individual people who the office manager is responsible for, they're performing great. Office manager is doing great. If they're not performing great, office manager is not performing great. If there's a mixed bag where some are performing great, some are not performing great, it's still mixed for the office manager. So that's how I believe is the best way to determine how well the office manager is performing. Absolutely. I personally believe that when it comes to building a team, managing and leading people, the best book that I've read thus far is Principles by Ray Dalio. He has, I'm not going to go through and talk about the whole book, but one key principle that he talks about is the importance of radical truth and radical transparency. He advocates for a culture of radical truth and transparency within the team. And he does that by encouraging open and honest communication. And team members can openly express their thoughts and concerns. And he believes that that leads to better decision making. I 100% agree. One of the key roles of an office manager is to provide that level of radical truth and radical transparency. See, the rest of the team is not going to tell the doctor the truth all the time. And I'm not saying they're going to lie, but what I'm saying is you get used to and comfortable with giving your boss good news, you know? And so doctors hold this position in our society, and rightfully so, because of their intelligence, their level of work ethic, where people put them on a pedestal. And a lot of times, the staff, they don't want to let this person down. The role that the office manager plays is they're going to oftentimes be the person to give bad news to the doctor. They're the person who's going to tell the doctor the things that they may not necessarily want to hear, but things that need to be said. They're going to recommend that somebody that the doctor may really like as an employee, they may tell that doctor, hey, so and so is underperforming, and here are the metrics that shows that they're not doing a good job. You know, the role of the office manager is to provide that radical truth and that radical transparency. They're going to be throwing out ideas. Maybe the doctor may have an idea, and the office manager may be the person to come and say, you know what, we shouldn't do that because XYZ and 1 2 3. It's very important that the office manager plays this role. And so I highly recommend the book Principles by Ray Dalio. You can just go through it. It's a nice sized book, but he has it outlined and bullet pointed so well that you could go and just specifically find the radical truth and radical transparency part and read that. I highly recommend you reading that and thinking about that as you're looking to hire an office manager. And here's one key point: you want to make sure that your office manager has the courage to be radically truthful and radically transparent. See, you don't want your office manager to be a yes person who just agrees with everything that you say. If they agree with it, they should agree with it. But if they see an issue with it, they should speak up, because if they're always agreeing with you, then they're not needed. If you hire an office manager who thinks like you and always agrees with you, they are not needed. You need somebody who can bring you a different perspective. So you have so you're coming at problems not with the same angle all the time. I would say the last minute tips or advice in regards to office managers is you definitely want to get a good one. And when you find a good one, pay them accordingly. Of all the staff that you have, I personally believe that adequately paying your office manager is extremely valuable, because good office managers don't go anywhere. They stay at places for very long periods of time. And so, although it may be easier to replace a medical assistant, replace an LPN, replace an admin person, and oftentimes you'll see more turnover in those positions. You want to make sure that you're in alignment with your office manager, that you are compensating them well, and that you're utilizing them to the best of your ability, because the office manager's job is to make your job easier. You office manager is supposed to provide a soft pillow to sleep at night. An office manager is supposed to take a bunch of stuff off your plate so you can show up to work and playing the doctor role, play your role, and stay in your lane, as we always like to talk about. What other specific topics related to the business of private practice management would you like for us to cover? Please share in the comments below or reach out to us on social media or our email address, dermbiz@gmail.com. Our mission is to create a movement of collaboration and support amongst physician-owned private practice owners. If you would like to join that movement, again, don't forget to like, share, comment, and please don't forget to subscribe.